we had another meeting, and there was a proposal to have a team to review the implementation of this MOU. I have asked respectfully that I be left out of that team because I have already declared this MOU dead. I have already done so publicly. So there is no point. I'm not a mortician. There's no point of me going to go through a document that I've already declared dead.
Welcome back to NewsGang. That is ODM Secretary General Senator Edwin Sifuna speaking a few days ago in the studio. Look, there was a lot to talk about in that conversation, but primarily the thing that comes out is the discord within the party, a Secretary General making such a bold statement. This was just days after the party leader had another interview on NTV and, spoke extensively about the support for the Kenya Kwanza administration. But then it's looking like there might be some voices of dissent. And interestingly, this coming during the year when ODM is marking 20 years and is perhaps, correct me around this table, now the oldest party, second oldest party?
Second oldest.
After KANU.
Yep.
What a place they find themselves in.
Yvonne, unajua ulikuwa witness kwa hii interview, so you need to give us a lot of background info.
A lot of context. I think Senator Sifuna speaks very openly for himself and very articulately on what he feels are the issues there. And you can see the reaction that has caused, right, from various people within the party and outside of it. Agreeing with him, disagreeing with him. He's speaking in his own capacity. He's speaking as Secretary General of the party. But there is quite a bit of turmoil in this party following their decision to get into a working arrangement with the Kenya Kwanza administration. In fact, so bad is that situation that, according to Edwin Sifuna, this is what he calls confusion that the leadership has caused in the party.
I want to apologize to members of ODM today for all the confusion we as a leadership have caused, because it is very difficult now to discern the position of ODM on major issues. And that is the biggest sadness, because it should be easy. It should be easy. When a member of ODM proposes a bill saying, oh, we want to limit the rights under Article 37. What is ODM without Article 37? What is ODM without street protests? What is ODM? ODM is a movement that has been built on the strength of the people. So you cannot be the ones telling us today that, oh, you are sponsoring a bill to limit the rights under Article 37. We swore to this constitution. And that is where confusion comes in for people like me, because I now can no longer pronounce myself authoritatively on the position of a party when it comes to the rights under Article 37.
That's a strong statement coming from the Secretary General of a party, Sam.
Right, and towards the end, she's talking about what Esther Pasari is the Member of Parliament for Nairobi, she's a woman representative here, was doing with the Public Order Amendment Bill, which I understand that she has since decided to take it away. It was still a draft proposal. Is it? Proposed legislation at the draft stage. Eventually it would have gotten to the stages of enacting a bill within Parliament. But you have to trace this to where it started. Remember, in 2022, there's an election, clear majority in the Senate, not very clear majority in the National Assembly. In fact, Azimio had the majority members of Parliament, if you had to reflect on the judgment that came from the High Court early in the year. You see the steps that the president moved so quickly to make sure that he's able to get a majority in the National Assembly, and in the end ended up with the leader of majority as Kimani Ichung'wah. So let me just walk a journey, because back in January 2023, which is just a few months after the general election, you saw some members of Parliament from the Jubilee Party meeting up with Rigathi Gachagua, who was the deputy president then. The following month, which was in February 2023, those same members of Parliament went to State House to meet the Deputy President then, Rigathi Gachagua, and President William Ruto. Thereafter, you had the members of Parliament saying that they are sorry for the offences or for the sins they may have committed, so they are asking to be taken back home. Well, the home would appear to have been the Kenya Kwanza, working with the presidency, because previously, you know, Jubilee Party was the party of the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, at that time. But then around February 2023, the same month that the president was meeting Jubilee, he was also meeting members of the ODM party. Among them was Senator of Kisumu, Tom Ojenda, and I think there were Felix Jalango. There's another name,
Odiwuor,
yes.
Yes, exactly. I think there was the member of parliament for Bondo, there was the member of parliament for Gem, and the member of parliament for Suba South, Karoli Omondi. But then after that meeting, you recall there was a lot of hue and cry within the ranks of ODM. In fact, they went ahead to start a disciplinary process to discipline those particular members of parliament. And thereafter, the woman representative for Nairobi was actually also reprimanded.
Yeah.
Do you know why? Because she voted in support of the finance bill of 2023. She was fined, I think, 250,000 shillings. I don't know that she paid. But so you can see the chronology of events. That was Feb, Tom Ojenda and team meeting the president. In March 2023, the ODM leader, Raila Odinga, calls for protests against the regime because of the measures they were implementing, but at the same time, for the appointment of a selection panel to pick new IBC commissioners. The troubles started then. Down in April, I think it was the 1st of April, the president calls for truce, cessation of hostilities, and in fact that happened, and said that he's ready for bipartisan talks. Yeah. That never really took effect. Recall again in July of that year, shortly after Finance Bill, or now Finance Act 2023 was passed, they went back to the streets to protest against the same. Yeah. At this time, those that had gone to State House to meet with the president, this is Jubilee members of parliament, a section of ODM members of parliament, they were looking at their colleagues in Azimio as, what's wrong with you guys? Don't you know what you have come here to do? Now, quickly, in 2024, we have a different game plan, a different war in June and July. Yeah. It's about the finance bill of 2024. And the Gen Zs stand up against it. Azimio takes a back seat, but principally says that we agree with these protesters because these are bad proposals. That time, John Mbadi, who was the nominated member of parliament, was with the Gen Z team. So as all that is happening, then you find that shortly after, there's the breach of parliament, June 25th, and thereafter the president breaks, the cabinet brings on board some members from the ODM party, forms a broad-based government. So you can see, the ODM party was complaining that the president and his party is interfering with political party independence. In July, August 2024, he's volunteering members of his party to join government and go ahead and form the broad-based government. But what happened after broad-based government? Impeach Rigathi Gachagua. This is September, October 2024. So you can see what is happening to the political parties. They are shifting. Now, after the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua, what is the next big thing? It is taking Raila to the African Union Commission as the chairperson of the commission. So while there, so everything is quiet. There's a court matter contesting that indeed Azimio is the majority. It's not Kenya Kwanza, but because we need peace, we need to win the seat. So everyone in Azimio is supporting Raila Odinga. But just before that, then you find there's a judgment that comes and says, indeed, the speaker was wrong in communicating that Kenya Kwanza is the majority party. He has to go back to the drawing board. And I remember at the time, leader of minority, Junet Mohammed, and the minority whip then and now.
It could well be majority, no?
Well, it looks like. Millie Odhiambo saying that this government is broad but not based. They were rejecting the subsequent ruling of Speaker Moses Wetangula. And remember, Moses Wetangula, the Speaker of the National Assembly, is indicted by the High Court that you cannot continue to be the leader of the Ford Kenya Party and at the same time serve as the Speaker and chairperson of the Parliamentary Service Commission, which is an independent commission. So look at what is happening to the political parties. At this time, the Speaker has since ruled that indeed the Jubilee Party, under the stewardship of Sabina Chege, can actually be a parliamentary party with its own set of leadership. Then, after the AUC defeat of Raila Odinga, what happens? In quick succession, in March, UDA-ODM pact. So when this pact is signed, you had punished Tom Ojenda and company, actually expelled them from the party, made Esther Passaris to pay a fine of 250,000 shillings. And now you're here working with the government and signing an ODM-UDA pact. There's a lot of lack of political hygiene, such that you have Jubilee members who feel more UDA than UDA.
Yeah.
You have UDA members who have since fallen out because they are sort of Gachagua orphans, allow me to use that name, now looking for a new home in DCP. You have ODM parties that had been expelled, but now look like they went ahead to prepare the way for these others. And now you have people that feel, no, we shouldn't have joined government in a pact, or rather ODM joining UDA in a pact. And that's where Sifuna comes in. So all this has disrupted the political parties to an extent that you do not know what party you're dealing with at the moment.
And thanks for tracing it to the original sin. And it's interesting, isn't it, that where we find ourselves now, where people can't define who they are, and you quibble over small things, and Jamila will come to you in a minute, over, so is this a broad-based government? No, this is an association, this is a working arrangement, it is not a coalition government. So now you see we're quibbling over all of these small issues. But it just reminds me and takes me back to the 7th of March 2022, when then Deputy President William Ruto spoke about it being a mongrel of a government system. If you would recall, he spoke about that at Chatham House in London, criticizing the then handshake between President Uhuru Kenyatta at the time and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. This would now possibly qualify as a mongrel whose bloodlines cannot be traced anymore. Jamila, irony, it's come back full circle.
It's come back full circle.
Hasn't even taken 3 years.
2022 March.
Right? And here we are now.
You know, Yvonne, when I was reading a bit, and I don't know how this is related, but it said since 2010, since we got a new constitution, no president has run on the same party in the second term. Well, when they're trying to run for the second term, they've all changed from party ya Kwanza. So it's not cast in stone where anyone will be by 2027. But then listening to what Sifuna was speaking about, the Secretary General of ODM, there's something I want us to hear about what he talked about this agreement, which is not what it is been painted out to be. Let's listen to Edwin Sifuna.
I warned that the problem with doing a formal MOU with UDA is that it didn't matter what the MOU said. The people from UDA, the government, William Ruto, is not interested in the details of the MOU. And that is why he gets upset when I remind him what the MOU said, you know. They wanted a document that they could then go and, run a PR campaign around and say, oh, tumeungana, we are together. That is not what this document says. This document does not establish a coalition agreement between ODM and UDA. But that's the impression they've been creating. They go out there and say, and I had warned that the PR disaster that was going to come from this was going to be something that was going to be very difficult to manage. Unfortunately, the foremost PR officer for the party is the SG. And that is where I'm saying there's difficulty that has come from this.
And I remember when he was speaking here, Yvonne, he said that the reason why they agreed to work with UDA was to avert the country collapsing as a state. But he was talking about how they'll continue with this association until 2022. But he said it's untenable as there has been a breach of agreement. But when he speaks, Yvonne, and he says there's nothing to see here, begs the question of is what he's saying different from what we've been shown in terms of you have ODM leaders of the party, including a former chairman, John Mbadi, in government as a CS Treasury. You have Ali Hassan Joho, who's also a CS. You have Opiyo Wandayi, who was a leader in Parliament, also a CS. And then you have the members of Parliament from ODM right now, who we don't know where they stand in Parliament in terms of being official opposition. Wanaimba nyimbo za serikali, they're the ones who speak the loudest in Parliament when they're supporting the government, and they even stop parliamentary business to start bashing Gachagua and the opposition. Then is that what, because according to Sifuna, there isn't much on paper, but what we are seeing in reality seems to be much in terms of how those offices were gawanywa, and what we are seeing, the fact that Raila Odinga is at events with William Ruto, the fact that tunaona wako pamoja, and the fact that it clearly looks like serikali ni yetu. Even the politics of East Yvonne. Remember during the maandamanos ya kupinga serikali, nothing was happening in Nyanza. In fact, places like Kisumu, business was going on as usual. Hakuwa na maandamano, there was nothing. As compared to maybe in Central, where maandamano yalikuwa yanaendelea, in Nairobi and Nakuru and places like that. So ODM to some extent iko kwa serikali. But how much of it iko kwa serikali? And after listening to Edwin Sifuna, it is clear that kuna mivutano kule ndani. And you've had other ODM members, long-term members like Siaya Governor James Orengo talk about how it's not a good idea to get into any sort of arrangement with the current government. The situation we are seeing notwithstanding, the issues to do with unkept promises, the economy, Gen Z protests, the disappearances, issues to do with the healthcare system, education. Help is broke. After all those years, you know, such things that people see and hear, and they think about why would you want to get into an arrangement with such a government where it seems like almost everything that they touch is not turning into gold.
It would seem, you know, the idea of how you identify a party, you know, ODM was in 2023 out on the streets, you know, during the protests, and then, of course, glaringly missing in 2024 and 2025. It would seem there is a battle for the soul of ODM, who they were, what the party is known for, what they stand for, which perhaps ideologically we've always said that parties, you know, always seem to, there doesn't seem to be much difference. But at least ODM was known for being on the streets. In that interview, Raila Odinga said he doesn't see the need of going back to the streets because the streets, you know, that approach has not yielded much change, and that, you know, there's a different approach. There would be some who would say, well, you know, that's a change of tune. Jay, does it seem like there is a fight, you know, for the soul of this? The young ones on one hand saying one thing, the old ones who are saying, no, 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 let's try this route, work with government and see how far that goes.
Indeed, there's glaring confusion within ODM. And I think this is what, and allow me to use this word, might lead to an intergenerational issue within the party. Because when you listen to Edwin Watanya Sifuna speak, and you hear Raila Odinga speak, initially you might be tempted to think that Sifuna is speaking the language of Raila Odinga. But in other quarters, what Raila Odinga says is completely different from what Sifuna says. And Sifuna's interview coming about 3 days after Raila's interview, which I think in a political party's hierarchy should not have come in such quick succession, and a central management committee meeting that I think happened on Monday, and none of these issues were mentioned, and tells you that Sifuna needed some space to ventilate. That probably within the party, what we call the owners of the party are comfortable with the arrangement that is. And Sifuna is looking out for himself going forward. And why? Because as a young politician, although not very young, considering his age, he's really looking at what does the future hold for me in the grand scheme of things that is happening in the Kenyan political space. Because if I continue to hang with ODM, whose real ownership insists that they're in a working arrangement with Kenya Kwanza, then what does that mean for my political future? If elections were to be called today and his beloved ODM is stuck in this arrangement, what would be the odds that he would vie on that party ticket and garner votes and win a seat? So he has to look at all that. And that is why when he speaks, you tend to marry his quest for ODM to unshackle itself from this Kenya Kwanza debacle, and also look at the future and say, who are the next possible voters and what are their sentiments about this arrangement that we are in? So he has to take care of that by coming out forcefully and say, I, Edwin Sifuna, I am not for this. If I'm called for any discussion around this arrangement, I will not be party to it. So that it's out there, it is clear. Because he's securing his political future. Because as things stands, he is gravitating towards the people who are saying William Ruto has bungled everything and needs to go. And therefore, he will not be in the same ship with anybody who is saying that William Ruto deserves a second term. So he is carving out a niche for himself that if push comes to shove, he says, I said it. I denied it 3 times. I was not party to it. So that he's without blemish. That is the first thing he's doing. 2, he's crying for help. That he's speaking for a number of young people. And if you look at the ODM party, there are a number of young people. Look at the Caleb Amisi. You look at the Anthony Kibagendi. You move to UDA. There's the Mohamed Jichopevu and all these people that are strategically avoiding to be seen with the original party formations and their leadership in the current space. Because any association, their political future remains uncertain. Because they'll be told, you hung out with the bad guys when we needed you. You did not come out and defended us when we needed it. So, selfishly so, he's crying out for help and putting out an alert there that maybe in the near future, we will abandon this ship. And that is why he's saying any discussion that revolves around UDA, ODM, count me out. Mimi siko, nimejiondoa. Any formation that gets William Ruto out of the office, I am with it. So he's just a politician that is carving out a future for himself, looking out for himself, and in as much as he insists that ODM, from where I sit as the Secretary General, has got no working arrangement with Kenya Kwanza or UDA as it were, we know the people who, when they speak, the ODM party has spoken.
Is he not now?
Yeah.
He's not anymore?
No, he speaks, and I'll say this with a lot of... He says what he has been approved to say.
Yeah, okay.
But there are people... There are people, because I can say it here, remember, when William Ruto disbanded his cabinet, the first person to come out and say ODM will work with UDA, whether people like it or not, was Dr. Uburu Oginga in the early days. And he stuck to it. And to date, he says they are sticking with William Ruto. And he's rarely challenged within the ranks of the party with such
What's Uburu Odinga's position in the party? In the party?
He doesn't have an official position, but...
He doesn't need one.
He doesn't need one. But he speaks. And when he speaks, party members listen. So these are the confusions that Sifuna must confront. Even as he comes out strongly and says ODM is not party. There are these other guys that when they speak the voice of the party. And it is known.
So, Alina says, as we close, what do you make of what's happening within ODM? But it's not just ODM, by the way. UDA, and hopefully in a minute or so, we'll listen to Ndindi Nyoro, who also himself, after his ouster as budget committee chair in the National Assembly, is also now the latter-day saint who sees all the ills that the government is doing. So it's ODM, but it's also on the other side. So it would seem that this working arrangement has had casualties on both sides.
Let me just go to the events in ODM first. And when you hear of owners of the party, the most unfortunate thing about party politics in this country is when you're told about owners of the party, we're actually making reference to tribe. Which is why I asked a simple question. What is the position of Oburu Odinga in ODM? The position of Odinga Oburu in ODM is, 1, he is a Luo. 2, he is the brother of Raila Odinga. So somehow that gives him higher ownership status than the Secretary General of ODM, Edwin Sifuna. That's how sad the state of party politics in this country is. So that the weight of Oburu Odinga's position is entirely because of tribe and actually relationship to party leader. That is how it works. But let's say one thing that happened on the set that you were in charge of the other day, Yvonne. One thing that came out very clearly is Edwin Sifuna showcased himself as a conviction politician. And there are very, very clear circumstances to prove that. A lot of what is going on right now in our party politics is convenience. So you listen to Sifuna, the gentleman is still trying to fight for conviction, things that you believe in. Is this right or wrong? Is this correct or not correct? He is in that space. And number two, he is also looking at the political environment around in this country. I think there was to one of the questions that you asked, and he spoke of the removal of President Ruto as being the highest priority, because you can't give Albert Ojwang markets or roads or some dual carriage. Yeah. That is conviction politics. And in history, there are very few such politicians that stood out. And I want to refer you back to the 70s when there was only one party in this country called the Kenya African National Union, KANU Party. In the 70s, when Parliament was Parliament, it was very, very vibrant, one-way street. But in there was some conviction politicians, young, the age of Edwin Sifuna, and even younger, who stood out and said, no, we will correct this government. And they were nicknamed by, it was Charles Njonjo who nicknamed them Six Bearded Sisters. Bearded Sisters. Yeah. There was James Orengo, Machofi from the coast. There was Koigi Wamore. There was Chelagat Mutai, who was a lady from Nandi. Very, very brave people who spoke truth to power. Let's be fair, that is the space Edwin Sifuna is playing at right now. Conviction politics. That even in the face of all this convenience that goes on, he still chooses to say, can we stick to what is right and what is wrong? And that is why he is really struggled with this coalition thing. Even, do you remember the signing ceremony? He showed up, but he was a troubled soul. He knew he was in the wrong place. Something sinister is going on around this place. Not every fiber of his heart has agreed with what is going on, but he played respectfully. And I think the reason he played along is Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga also, partly, is a conviction politician. There's no way you can go to jail for 8 years if you're not standing for anything. He is a version, an older version of Edwin Sifuna. There were days he stood for one thing, and he could go to jail for it. But I think with time and age, he'll balance things. Yeah. And I want to go to why the balancing, which takes me back to the story of parties and tribes. Let's face it, power politics in this country revolves largely around two communities. Two communities. That's the Kikuyu community and the Luo community, historically. And there are very, very historical facts around that. And that is back to the days of the Kenya African National Union formation, the Lancaster talks, the competition between the so-called big tribes. By the way, in the independence politics, these two communities were in the same pot. And everybody else was in another pot called KADU, Kenya African Democratic Union. Because of this is where the smaller communities were. And who are the leaders in those smaller communities? The Kalenjin, who are led by former President Daniel Arap Moi, who was then Minister for Home Affairs. Now, everyone troops to KANU, and then within KANU, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and Jomo Kenyatta, to the lake and the mountain, have the first major problem. Leading to the collapse of their union in 1966. I think, was it on this set that Martha Karua spoke about the 1969 oathing? Oathing, yeah. Where the community, swore that there'll be no transfer of power to certain communities. Now, those were the years that planted this politics of convenience, where convenience is a major strategy in winning political power. Now, that's why you notice, and I keep insisting on this theory of the three communities that somehow can't end up on the same table together. One has to step aside. And look, battle weary. I mean, ODM has fought so many battles trying to get to political power all the way from 2007, and always coming so close, so close, and so close. And then, how close was it the last time? In 2022? Sifuna told you he doesn't understand how they lost the election. That's very, very true, that ODM cannot possibly explain how they lost the presidential election in 2022. Then convenience kicks in. President Ruto is having trouble with his main ally, Rigathi Gachagua. And there comes an opportunity. And ODM, which in my view has been an expert party when it comes to giving political insurance, stepped in and big time to save President Ruto from further trouble. Because have you stopped to imagine if ODM is not working with Ruto and Gachagua is out? What do we have? Yeah, we have a bicycle, you know, and will it reach the destination? We don't know. We just have instability. So ODM, with his comprehensive cover, came in. And Raila Odinga the other day confirmed he is in this till 2027. So the cover expires. He hasn't indicated whether it expires in 2027 or it will be up for renewal in 2027. So convenience kicks in, especially when people and parties and players get lose hope with systems. And I'm just imagining if the country continued this way for another 10, 15 years, will Sifuna hold on? Or will he also now start doing what Raila Odinga has to do now? If you can't get power through the elections, then post-election, can you somehow come in, which is politics of convenience. So Sifuna, to his credit, and in his age, is playing conviction politics, but then the reality is completely different. And then the last thing I think Sifuna is struggling with is the obvious, visible, palpable loss of popularity for the Kenya Kwanza administration. And he's wondering, is it good, calculating, strategic politics to hang around with KK? You see, there's Ruto must go on the street, Ruto must go everywhere. Kenya Kwanza is facing all manner of problems. But what is the convenient side of the ODM politics saying? We've been there before. They've done it before. Last election, they carried the burden of incumbency on behalf of Uhuru Kenyatta. And William Ruto ran on the other side as the change candidate. What irony. That was the deputy president of that government. But that is how it's been working. And I think despair as well, and strategy maybe. You know, you will hear some saying, you know, we are in politics for power. So if there is a small gate at the back of the fence, then you can use that one as well. And maybe they need to explain to Sifuna that one.
Maybe they do. Who is they?
Wenye Chama.
Chama. All right, I mean, there's a lot happening. Like we said also on the other side, there's much to talk about it, I think, and analyze when it comes to that, because it's also a bit of disgruntlement that is within UDA ranks as well, and within the wider Kenya Kwanza. So we shall wait and see how it goes. Jamila, it's time?
I think we will Malize.
Sindio?
Seriously, I think it's been a while since you started the final word.
Most obliged.
Pokea.